Hey, everybody. I see David and Dustin online. Anybody else? All right. Well, you're there in some sort. I will get started. Today's class, it's April the 11th, and we're going to be covering just a little bit of touch up on Word because we just finished that, and you have a Word exam coming up, and then we'll start in on Excel, where your homework for next week will be Excel Chapter 1. So if we take a look real quick, you've got a Word exam a week, well, next Monday on the 16th. It's a practical exam with a couple of file uploads. So you'll just come in for the class, you'll log into your MyEMCC, you will open up the file that you start with, and you'll have the directions. I'll pass out the directions, but it'll also be available online, and you can work your way through that just like it was a homework. And you know, we'll talk a little bit about it next week, but you just want to be careful. The good thing is I'm not going to be going back and forth as much, you know, as it does in the book. Then you also have due next Monday would be the first chapter in Excel. That's projects 1, 2, 3, and 4A. So you don't have to go beyond 4A. And again, those are all due next week. Excuse me. I do want to let you know there's two files that I put up on MyEMCC. So if you went into MyEMCC, went to handouts, scrolled all the way down to the bottom, you'll see general handouts. There is a Word 2016 shortcuts. It's a 15-page document with lots and lots and lots of Word shortcuts. Obviously, some of them are pretty easy. You know, Control S is for save, Control C is for copy, Control V is for paste, but it gets into some pretty, you know, you can set line spacing by doing Control 1, Control 2, Control 5, Control 0, you know, and it's all in here. I'm not going to be testing you on this, but if you want to know a lot of the shortcuts, that's available for download. The second one is a Windows command shortcut, and I'm going to have it up here. Hold on. Thought I had it up here. Notes. Oh, where'd it go? Well, it's online. I don't want to download it right now, but it's a one-page Windows shortcuts. And so that's a little bit easier to go back and forth with. It's got your basics. The only ones I would probably really require you to, and if you look at that document, they're actually highlighted in yellow, are things like Control Copy, Control V, Control, you know, Control B for bold, Control A for all, Control Z for undo. So there's some really basic ones. If you're going to be in computer science, you should know those. So take a look at that if you get a chance. I did want to talk briefly. There's a couple of cool features that we haven't talked about. They're not really covered in the book. It's called, it's like a function you can use in Word. And I'll open Word in a second and show you how that works. But it's called lorem, stands for lorem ipsum, which is if you've ever seen a document that has lots of gibberish text in it, but it allows you to make a document that kind of looks like you want it to, but doesn't make any sense. And that's because they're using this. And let me switch over to Word for a second. Can I get at least one person to confirm you can hear me? Uh-oh, let me see.
I can.
Okay.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Thanks, Dustin. I just didn't want to be sitting here and I don't know why. Sometimes the chat doesn't show up automatically. I had to go open it from the other menu. So anyway, I'm going to flip back over to Word. I got to go share that. All right, so you should be seeing a fairly simple Word document right now. And basically, if I were to type into a Word document equals lorem, and then open and close parentheses, it will generate text, just like that. Now, it has a default of 5 paragraphs. So if I only wanted 1 paragraph, then I would, I'm going to delete this. I would just write equals lorem 1. Hit return. That equals lorem 1 disappears. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. It was replaced by 1 paragraph of random text. Now, this is important because in Excel, when you use a formula, the formula is still there, but what you see in the cell is the result of the formula. In Word, when you use this formula, it's replaced by the outcome of that formula. So, and we could do, equals lorem 2, going to produce 2 paragraphs. Kind of cool. Now, I'm going to flip back over now. There's probably an easier way to do this, but of course, I don't know what it is. So we're back over to a browser, and this is a cool website. If you just go to list of random names, you get a website like this. You can say, well, how many random names do I want? Do I want male, female, both, first names, yes, no? Do you want alliteration? If you did alliteration, you'd only get, Bob Barker, Tom Thomas, Cynthia, Charles, whatever, but first and last names would start with the same letter. So if I hit this generate button, I'm going to get a list of 20 names. Now this is in HTML format, but you'll look down below and I can list it in a text area. I can export it as PDF, or I can even include it in an ipsum, a lorem ipsum paragraph or set of paragraphs where those names are embedded in it. So let's take a look at the 3 of them. If I do that, hey, look, I got 20 names. I can copy and paste them out. I could use those in Excel if I want to generate random names. I could use them in a Word document, doesn't matter. You go backwards. If I do lorem ipsum, hey, I got a couple of paragraphs with all those names generated into it. So not too bad. If I had only done 5 names, generate lorem ipsum, gives me less because it just embeds it. There's no, I don't know what algorithm they use to do that, but at least it gives you something you can copy out and use in your document. So cool things. And again, that's it. Can't get any easier. Listofrandomnames.com. So that's pretty cool. Any questions? Anybody have any questions on Chapter 7's homework? I haven't checked to see if you've all turned it in, but oh, check the chat. All right, so let's flip over to PowerPoint. All right, so you should all be seeing a PowerPoint. I'm going to, I'm not going to make it full screen because if I do that, it goes to the full screen of my screen, which looks really strange if you don't have a wide monitor. If you're watching it on a regular one, all it does is shrink it down to a fairly short but wide rectangle. So let's take a look. We're going to look at Excel Chapter 1, which is about preparing an Excel worksheet. It's pretty much introduction to it. I know some of you already have experience with Excel, but humor me. Some of you don't, and if you haven't figured out about human nature, if I were to say who's good at Excel, you'd all raise your hands, even though probably half of you have got minimal experience with it. Most of the things that you can do in Excel, you could also do in Google Sheets, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I have a Google Sheet that we're going to use as an example. So, we're going to create a sheet, enter some data, save it, open it, close it. I'm going to skip some of that because if you haven't figured out how to open and close a file now, you should come see me. Working our way around the Excel, program, same as everyone. We've got the quick access toolbar at the top. We have our file tabs across the top, and it's got file, home, insert, page layout, formulas, data, review, and view. And over the course of the next couple of weeks, we'll go through most of those. Obviously, depending on which tab that you select, you're going to have a different ribbon showing below that. And then down at the bottom, you're going to have your work area here. And this is what we're used to seeing with Excel or with Google Sheets. Columns are all A through whatever, and rows are all 1 through whatever. So you start with, actually you could start with 1, 2, or 3. You can set the default how many sheets are going to be open in your brand new file. This one's showing just 1 sheet, but you can add more sheets by hitting the plus button. And we'll go over it in a minute and actually look at some of this. If you want to select everything in an Excel spreadsheet, you click the top square. It's not labeled, but it's what's above the 1 and to the left of the A. You can select entire columns by selecting the numbers at the top, or selecting entire rows by selecting the number at the left. All right. Yeah, we talked about that. When you're in here, where you see this particular cell highlighted, it has what they call a handle. That's the name of that cell, and it's always the column followed by the row. So this is A1. We went over, to one of the others. It would be G5, N13, and you can go as far over as you want and as far down as you want. I've worked and built spreadsheets that have gone out to triple letters like Z's or AA, 15, and so I've gone all the way through the alphabet once, gone all the way through the alphabet twice, and on it goes. Now you can move around within the areas. If you want to go from your cell to the cell below it, you can just hit enter. You want to go up, you can do shift enter. You want to go to the side, it's tab, shift tab to go back. Hit the home button on your keyboard. It's going to go up to the top cell at the beginning of the row. And you can go control end and control home to go to the first and last cells. Control N doesn't help a lot in the default because when you open up Excel, it's a big honking sheet that they give you. So go and control N, you're going to find yourself down at the 5,000th row and way over in, I forget what letter it is. We'll check it in a minute when we go there. Along with the keyboard, so you can do keyboard strokes, including the arrows and the tabs and the shift tabs and shift enters and so forth. You can just use the mouse and click in different places in your worksheet, or use the scroll bars to move up and down, side to side, and then click in it with your mouse. Realize, and I'll show you this as well, that when you're moving around inside of an Excel spreadsheet, if you are highlighted in A1, and then grab the scroll bar and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll until you're way out to column Z15 or something, you're way out there. Your focus is still back in A1. So if I now hit tab, it's going to go to B1. And all of your scrolling over to find the information you want you just get sucked right back to the beginning. So when you go and find the area that you want in a worksheet, make sure you're clicking it with the mouse. And that way you'll have the focus there. Entering data, the easiest thing to enter data is you just click in it. When you click in a cell to begin with, you have the entire focus of the entire cell. If you start typing something, it will replace anything that's there or insert it if you haven't done it. As with all Windows documents, backspace key is going to delete the character to the left, and delete is going to delete it farther on down the row. If you want to enter, I never use this, but I'd have to go show it to you, but maybe this one does. Nope. Anyway, up next to, between the cell reference, in this case, you see the cell reference A2. So if we were down in the sheet, A2 is highlighted. And then you have the formula bar that's next to it. And in between there is this little place where you can either cancel what you're doing, enter what you're doing, or you can also enter a formula. If we go to the print section, that gives you the option to print your workbook. And I think probably, let me do one more slide. We're going to flip back over to Excel now because telling you about this isn't always as easy as just showing you. So let me do that. All right, you should now be seeing an Excel spreadsheet. Going back, notice that where I have the cell highlighted, it's in F12. It's only because I've scrolled down a little bit, F12, and you'll notice up here, it says F12. So it tells me where I am, and you can see by clicking around that the name for that cell is shown up at the top. I mean, you can also just look at the top and look at this, and you can see where you are. So either one. If I wanted to put a function in here, I could click this function, pick from one. So again, I just click that fx. Fx is a notation for a function. And I could tell it to do sums, averages, and there's hundreds of possibilities. And I'm going to show you a few of those in a minute, but let's just say we had, 5, 8, 12, 7, and 9, and 11. Now, I can go and hit function. Maybe I want to do the sum, hit OK, and then I've got to tell it, what do I want it to sum? Well, I want it to sum H6 through H11, and look, it already figured it out. So I hit OK, and it tells me I've got 52 in that range right there. Pretty cool. I could also go back in here and change it. Sorry, let me delete it. And try a different one, and I'm going to do the average this time. Hit OK. Also picks, again, it automatically picks the range above it or the range to the left of it if it recognizes that that's where the items are that you're working on. And I'm going to hit OK, and now I get an average. If you have never done this before, this is also an option. I need to know information about these 6 cells. If I go down to the bottom of the window, you'll see in the very bottom that I've already got information. It says the average is 8.666667. Here, you know what? There, I have a whole number now. Well, all right. But so if I have a range that's been selected, The count is 6 because there's 6 numbers. The sum of those is 52, and the average is 8 points and 2/3. So that information is always available down at the bottom of any Excel spreadsheet when you have a series of cells highlighted. If I highlight these 3 cells, all it can tell me is count is 3. There's 3 cells that I highlighted. It can't tell me anything else because there's no numbers in there. I can't do an average. It can't do anything else with it. So hopefully those are 2 useful features that you can work with. Oh, sorry, hold on a second. Try that. Yeah, couple of pretty basic things. So you open up in Home. We were talking about going to Print. If I go to File, if you've forgotten, this is called the Backstage area. And this allows me to go and open a new file, open an existing file, save this file. I can save it as something else. So I could save it, and I've got to go pick a place. Let's pick the desktop. And now look, I can save it as any of these different things. I could save it as a PDF. I could save it as a text file. I could save it as a template or an Excel workbook, which is what it already is. If I need to give it to somebody who's got an older form of Excel, I could save it as an older form. I could even put it as a CSV, as a comma separated value. Don't worry about it, but that's what that is. So let me see, I've got a couple of comments here. Amanda, if you keep that up with those comments, I'm just going to get you. That's all I'm saying. It's not assumed that you've already done this, so don't worry about it. You're going to gain some experience, and we're going to move on. All right, well, I'm not going to save anything here, so cancel that. But if we go to Print, so here I've got this file. It's a worksheet. And in order to print it, it's going to, we've got to tell it some things. And I tell it what printer I'm going to use. And if you're not on one of the, local Eastern Maine Community College computers, then you should also have this print to Adobe PDF, or you pick a printer. I can print the active sheet. Now, let me go back out of here. So I've only got one sheet here. It's called sheet 1. But if I added a second sheet, put some information in here, January. Show you how to do this in a minute. And 5, 6, 7, 8, and how many pairs of shoes we sell at the store every, So now I've got information on 2 sheets. If I go back to File, Print, I can tell it to print the active sheet. And if you look at the bottom, there's only one page that's going to be printed. But I could also tell it to print the entire workbook. And now if you look at the bottom, it'll say 1 of 2 pages. And if I click the arrow, there's my other page. So that second sheet is being treated as another page. Now, if I have data that goes beyond one page, it can't make it fit on one page, then it's going to scroll it off, just like Word. If you have a long document in Word, it takes 2 pages or 3 pages or 4 pages. I can also just print a selection. So let me go back. I'm going to just highlight this. Notice I'm leaving out the bottom here. If I go to File, Print, Selection, it's only going to show and print the things that I have highlighted. So I can do a lot of different things with this print option. I can also change the margins. The normal is 3/4 of an inch on the top and bottom and 0.7 inches on the right and left. But I could set it to 1 inch or 1.5 inches, or I could go to a narrow, which is 3/4 on the top and the bottom, and 1/4 of an inch on the sides. I can also go to custom margins and set those however I want to. Any questions? It's a Polar Pop day. All right. I can also go to scaling, and the default is no scaling. Remember how I said let's go back to our document here. You see, I don't know if you can see this, there's little dotted lines here. And there's one right down here. Those are where the page breaks are going to be. So if I go over here and start typing, and this is another page, and now I go over to File, Print, sorry, Print Active Sheet, you'll notice that there's still 2 pages, and the other page is that, and this is another sheet. But I could go and say, fit everything on 1 page. And it does, but you'll notice it has to make everything smaller. And at some point, it gets really hard. And another page. We go back now and try to file, print, fit everything on 1 sheet. Well, it did. Here's that what I just typed. Good luck reading this. You know, I could say, well, maybe if I do landscape, maybe if I go to narrow margins, it's a little bigger, but I think most people would complain if you gave them this document. So we're just going to do fit all rows on 1 page, and now we've got this and this. So hopefully you can see how you can change some of that. But let's, I'm going to go back here to the first page. Now, we've only been in the Home tab, but I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to go to what they call Page Break View. So instead of these little tiny dotted lines that are hard to see, you basically get, this is how it's going to print. Well, you know, I think I'd rather do this, and I'm going to drag this little line right over. I'm going to drag this little line. Oh, come on. Don't be like that. Well, it's being annoying. It should be able to do this. You ever have one of those days, right? You know, you're ready to do it, and it is just not behaving. So I can make them into whatever pages, but I should be able to drag that right over, and it's not going to let me do it. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I could also say, ooh, you know, I don't actually want to print any of this. I want it to stop there. I haven't lost my data, but I'm not going to print it. And I don't even have to worry about when I go to File, Print, that's all it's going to print. I don't have to, I can say no scaling. It still is only 1 page because it's been told to ignore everything that's off to the side. But the data is still there. That's an important consideration. All right. What else we got? Let's go back to normal. So a couple of things. I just put in, it's just text. It says data too big to fit in a cell. But you'll notice because there's nothing next to it, it just prints the entire line out. But if I go here, this one also says data too big to fit in a cell. But because there's something in the cell next to it, that has priority. And so you don't see the rest of A3 because B3 is on top of it. So, I mean, I could certainly do this so everything shows. Anybody know what else I can do? All right, sounds fine, Dustin and Amanda. I could also turn off the video too, that helps. So you have some bandwidth issues. So if I wanted all of this stuff to show, even though there's cells next to it, I can highlight a column. And notice I can highlight columns just by clicking up here. And what I can do is I can go into Home, Wrap Text. It's right up under the alignment section of the Home tab. If I wrap text, it takes anything that's in those and wraps it so that it fits better. I'm going to undo it because at the moment I don't want that. But so you have two choices. You can make the column wider, or you can do it wrapping the text. Now, here's a good example of where you can get into trouble. Now, I just typed the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's as high as I went. It's turning it into scientific notation. That's not what most people want. So I can go up here under the number section of the main Home tab. And I have general, which is what it's doing right now. I can do number, currency. Accounting is, I'll show you the difference between currency and accounting, and people like different ones depending on what you're doing. I can do short dates and long dates, time, percentages, fractions, scientific notation, which is what you see here. I'm not 100% sure why it shows scientific, because it does not normally do that. And then I can also just do text. I'm going to, you'll notice right now it's in general. It's not really in general, it's in scientific notation. So I'm going to go to number format, and it goes back. Now, I did not type in the decimal point and the 2 places. I can use these to increase and decrease the decimals. So I can decrease them back to where I want, or I can put a whole bunch of them there. Just depends on what you want. I tried to go beyond the decimal points, and it said, sorry, I can't do that. Didn't say that, but it dinged at me. Now, if I were to select currency, or this is accounting, you'll notice that it puts the $ at the leftmost edge of the cell, and it includes the number, the entire US budget. I'm going to make the number a little bit smaller. And it does 0.00 for the $. If I wanted currency, what it does is the number's the same, but it puts the $ directly next to the first number. So you can do either one. So this is currency. This is accounting. This is number. This is what general should have looked like. And then it was showing us in scientific notation. In scientific notation, you can, change the number of decimal places. Most of you probably aren't scientific notation kind of people. I was, because, well, I took science for umpteen zillion years. All right, what else do we have here? Now, when you're in a cell, if it's a number, it's a number. But if you're using it with text and other stuff, you can go in and change either everything that's in the cell. Like if I go down to this cell and I want to make the whole thing bold, I can just do whatever I want. I can change the font size. I can change the font color. So I can do that for the entire cell. But as you see here, I can go in here and just highlight a word or a letter, and I can change it. The height of the row will adjust for the size of the text. Unlike the width, which won't change, you have to actually drag that to change the width. The height of the cells will get larger or smaller depending on the size of the font. So You can do lots of cell formatting inside when you're dealing with text. And I can't remember. Let me go take a look at a number. I don't know if I can do the same thing. Probably can. Yep, I can. Oops. Or not. Let's see. No, it doesn't like that. So you can't do that with numbers. I didn't think you could. You can only do it for as long as you're in there, but as soon as you leave, boom, all bets are off. Now, if I wanted to do it, so this is a tip. If you need a number, so, you know, doing an address, Tom Bickford, 5345 Sylvan Road, Bangor, Maine, 04401. Look what it just did to the zip code. Numbers don't have leading zeros. We talked about this on Monday. If I need this to be a 04401, what I can do is I can type in an apostrophe, single apostrophe, 04401. Now you'll notice that there's a little arrow, a little triangle up in the upper left-hand corner. And if I click on it, I get this little information. And it says the number in this cell is formatted as text or preceded by an apostrophe, which is correct. That's what I did. And if you look up in the formula bar, you'll see that apostrophe there. I could have removed the apostrophe, but I'm going to actually do this first. Hold on. I'm going to go here and turn it into text. And now I can get rid of that apostrophe, and it will still stay as 04401. But you'll see that the little warning sign is still there saying, that's not really a number. It's a text of a number. But that's the only way to keep that 0. Although, having said that, let's try this again. 04401. I can go up into numbers. And this time, I'm going to use the number dialog box opener. I'm going to open that. And there's a cool thing down here called special. Ooh, look, zip code or zip code +4. So if I select zip code, it's going to reinsert that 0. Kind of cool. It works. This keeps it as a number, whereas this, it's as a text. Now, the cool thing with Excel is it doesn't really matter because both of those are sortable. If we did, let me go. The only problem, 555. Oh, I'm going to kill myself here. All right, so I have two numbers. I have a text of 04401 and a number 55555. If I want to add those, I can say equals A28, because that's that cell, you'll see it highlights, plus B28. And you know what? It added it, even though one of those is text. Doesn't have to both be numbers, because Excel has gotten smart enough to understand that, you know, oh, they're trying to add a number that's in text format, we'll just treat it as a number. And you could also do, you know, equals the A29, so this is where it really is a number, plus that B28. So I'm adding those two numbers, just using an equals this plus that formula, and I get the same number. Now the cool thing, if you look up at the top of the page, you'll see that this one is still in a text format, and if I go down one, this one is in a special zip code format. Although I could change this to just a number now. Get rid of the extra. So it doesn't care. It's smart enough to figure that out. All right, any questions? Tick, 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 tick. All right, nobody's popping in there. If we're going to use a formula, I'm going to go back up here. We're going to delete out what got automatically put in here. So if you're using formulas, there's three ways that you can put a formula in. You can enter it in the cell like I did down below here, where I simply said equals A28 plus B28, and it added those two numbers and gave it to us. I can enter the exact same thing in the formula bar up here. So if I go here, I could say up, and now the cursor is up here in the formula bar, and I can equal H6 plus H7 plus H8 plus H9 plus H10 plus H11. And you notice all of those have now highlighted. When I hit return, I'm all set. Obviously, as you get a longer list of numbers, this is where we do something like sum of H6 to H11. Now, this is important to understand. So if you look at this formula up top here, whenever you want to have something happen to a group of cells, you put the first cell and the last cell, and it will apply to everything in between. I could just as easily have had 3, 8, 5, 12, 9, 2, and in this case, I want this to equal the sum of H6 to I11. So it's going to apply it to not only down on one row, but across. Hey, it did it. Cool. So I can do a lot of different things. I could also have come up here and said equals H6 plus I6, and it gives me the 8, which, 5 plus 3 is 8. I would get that. I could have also done it as equal sum of H7 to I7. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice today. I'm not sure why. So doing a cell plus a cell is the same as using the sum formula. We wanted to do multiplication, we could just do equals H12, oops, sorry, 8, what am I in? H8 times, and the times in Excel is not an X, it's the asterisk, times I8. So this should give us 60, right? 12 times 5 is 60, and there it is. Okay. We can do division as well. I'm going to make this a little easier. Now notice, get out of this. Right now, the sum of all of these is 91. If I go up and change this to 12, this automatically becomes 92, because formulas are active. As soon as you change any of the things that it's being applied to, it's going to change the formulas. And so what I want to do is I can also do division, so equals H11 divided by I11, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So I can do multiplication, subtraction, division. I can do, averages, sums, products, quotients. There's a bazillion things that I can do. All right, let me get rid of some of this. Just want to get rid of that. I don't want to leave this straggler way over here. Okay. Using that help features. Oh, actually, sorry, there was one other way to do this. And that's to go up here to, well, actually, there's two more places. I can go up to formulas at the top here, and I can do an auto sum. I can do recently used. So what have I used recently? There are financial, logical, text-based ones. So there's an awful lot of functions, math and trig, lookup and reference, engineering. I'm not going to make you memorize all of these, but there's a huge number. I'm going to show you an example in a minute where we use a lot of formulas to manipulate data in a sheet. And I just wanted to use one that I've literally used in the last week to give you an idea what you can do. So I'm going to go up to insert a function. And the last one, I just want math and trig about recently used. I want a sum. Okay. And now, if you've never done this, I have two choices now. I can either take what it suggests, and right now it's suggesting I6 through I11, which is the number of cells directly above it that have numbers in them. That would be easy. I could also click this little box right here next to it. And if I click that, it says, what do I want? I grab the numbers I want, I hit return, and now it says H6 to I11. Cool. Now we have them all. If I hit enter, I get the thing I was looking for. I could just as easily have gone up here to recently used, average, click that, highlight that, click that, hit OK, and the average is 7 2/3. So depending on how good your skills are, half the time I would have just written in equals, what was I doing? Average of H6 to I11. Personally, that takes me less time. And the ones that you should really understand and try a few times are average and sum. Those are like the two biggies. The things that you need to know is that the asterisk is multiply, the plus is addition, the minus sign is subtraction, oh yeah, sorry. Okay. That was just different. All right, yeah, David, if you lose it, and you have any questions, email me. I'm going to be out of range until Monday or Sunday night. So if you have questions, you just do the best you can. Division, and if you use that, it means exponent. So, if I did 2 to the third, and everything has to start with equal. So that's the start of a formula. So if I did equals 2 to the third, that'll give me 8. So if you want exponents, that's probably the, most everything that you want. If you use parentheses, you use those to enclose what you need for a formula, like equals sum. Of different numbers, like we were doing I6 to I11. And you've got to put those into parentheses so it understands what you're talking about. All right. Let's see what else we got. I think that was, using the help features. So as with all of the others, up here in the tell me what you want to do. So if I said average, it gives me the auto sum function, which really isn't the auto sum. It's the auto formula. And there's the average is the second one down. I can also do max and min are two good ones. And I can also count the numbers, count the number of numbers. So if I did equals max of H6 to H11, the answer should be 12. If I do equals count of I6 to I11, it should be 6. So those are some fairly standard ones. Again, if I go to the auto sum, here are some of the most common ones. Here's any that have been recently used. And then, you get into other ones. They'll have you use a couple with financial as well. And, you can always do date equals date. Oops, what did I do wrong? No. Date value. No. Do you hate that? Oh, never mind. I gotta go look that one up. I never use it inside of a Excel spreadsheet, and I have forgotten apparently. All right. I think that's, you do have a page layout up here, which we'll talk more about, but it's pretty generic. I can set, what kind of margins, what orientation, landscape or portrait, what size of a page am I using? Again, if I was doing accounting and I was going to go meet with the accountants and we're going to sit down and pour over a bazillion numbers, then I might want to print it out on 11 by 17 sheets, which are very large, and I can have a lot of rows and a lot of columns, and without them getting too small. And if you ever look at a ledger book, they tend to be larger pages than you would get from just an 8.5 by 11. I can set print area. So I can also do this. I could say, I want this to be the print area. And now you'll see that that little line is around here. And if I go File, Print, no scaling, and print the active sheet, it only shows the part that I had set for the print area. And I can do the exact same thing if I go to View, Page Break View. See, that's where that is. So I can set the print area either using the Set Print Area under Page Setup, or I can do it under View, Page Break View. All right. I'm sure I've confused everybody. We're not doing any inserts for now, but you can insert. You're not going to insert a table. I can't imagine anybody inserting a table into Excel, but sure, go ahead, do it. You can insert pictures and online pictures. They do not work nearly as well in Excel as you would use them someplace else. You can insert charts, which are probably one of the most useful functions. I'm not going to show you here because we do that on another day. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to flip off of here, and I'm going to go over it. I'm going to use Google, a Google Sheet that I have set up, which all of the formulas are almost exactly the same, but it gives you an idea of what you can do in either Excel or in Google Sheets. So give me a second, I'll flip over. Oh, wrong thing. Hold on. There we go. So I'm going to go to oh, I guess it got closed. Hold on, give me a second. Sheets. Okay. So what I have here and what you should see is a Google sheet. I'm going to increase the. So, and at the bottom of the page, you'll see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different sheets. This is not unusual to have a bunch of sheets. The first one is a summary sheet, and we're going to ignore it. That pulls information from all the other sheets. What this is it is a workbook, and a workbook is a number of sheets. You can have a workbook of one sheet, have a workbook made of 2 or 3 or 4 or a dozen or whatever. And so this is a worksheet that I use with a local community auction that I help run. And they need to be able to enter the data as people bid for and win stuff. So first thing is we have a sheet that's got all of the things that people are going to be bidding on. This happened to be mostly a dinner auction where people were buying seats to go eat at other people's houses. It's a fairly close community. Everybody knows everybody. And so these were the meals. These were the people who donated them. This is what type it is. And the type is a drop-down menu, which is actually populated by another sheet. So, that you get that from there. How many people are they going to entertain? So this happens to be a breakfast that's going to be held at the Hilton Garden Inn, and on it goes. Then you have a bidder list. And would you believe I went on that, random name generator and pulled out this. So we have a list of the bidder numbers, and each bidder gets a little wand that's got the bidder number on it. So when they're at the auction, they can go, $25, $50, whatever. And the auctioneer can call them out by number. And when they come in and register in the beginning of the day, whoever registers them will say, okay, here's your bidder number 1 little paddle. And your name is, I don't know, Leda Nation. And this, if you'll notice, if B2, where the name goes, isn't empty, then it's going to concatenate, which means to put things together. And it's going to put together the bidder number, a hyphen, and their name. So that's why you see this generated now as 1-Leda Nation. The reason why that's important is because when people are registering the bids, they want more information than just 1, 2, 3, 4. It helps them, and I'll show you that in a second. So this is, except for column C, which is generated by a formula, and column 1, which is just an auto numbering sequence, the only thing the person running this has to do is enter people as they pick up their little paddles. Then, this is the fun one. This generates a list of all of the possible things for sale at the auction. Remember how there were 25 seats for the Hilton? So guess what? This automatically generates 25 spaces so that you can go in there and as people win things, say, oh, well, Endura Silvis won a seat for $14 and she actually got 2, so we'll give her 2. This one happened to be a flat rate, so they were just going at $14. Other ones, people could, bid higher. And again, it's a charitable function. Some people bid higher than others until all the seats are gone. And so that auto generates, if you look right here, it's a fairly long formula. But what it's doing is it's going and pulling items from the item list, which is that first sheet. That's this one. And it's pulling this item this many times. So it went in and it wrote Hilton Garden Inn breakfast 25 times. Then it wrote Hawaiian dinner 10 times, hand turn bowl one time, etc. And it put those in column B. Then as the auction went by, you had to pull from the list of people who had actually won, which is a hard copy list of the bidders. And so if you were halfway through your auction and somebody said, I won, and it's like, you're not on my list, you're number 34. What happened was somebody missed them, and you'd have to go back and go to your bidder list and do, Bob Barker. That automatically gives you Bob Barker here. And now I can say, oh yeah, there's Bob Barker. And he got his for $14 too. So that's the cool thing about formulas, is they all auto-generate as you're going through. Now then at the end of the day, this auto totals using, again, a formula. So how many things did Alba Carlos purchase? You see Bob Barker won that $14 ticket, and he's at checkout, and he's going to say, I'm going to pay my $14. Here's my check, or cash, and the pay was on 4/10/2019. Now you'll notice over here, because that meets or exceeds this, it's listed as paid. We actually had some people who might have put like $30, and you'll notice, again, it says paid as long as it's more. If they only paid $20, they said, oh, I've only got a $20 bill, then you'll notice it still shows as owing $8. So that's kind of cool. End of the day, how much what did Bob Barker get, and how much did he pay? So, oops, I've got to fix that. That shouldn't be showing up there. So Bob Barker, again, this is a drop-down menu, won one thing, Hilton Garden breakfast for $14. That's just a simple sum here. It's going to sum everything up here. But this is an auto-generation of a list from the other page. Because if I go to winning bids and Bob Barker, let's go find Bob outbid the other person. So now Bob also has the custom wildlife painting. And we go to the receipt and see it's showing up here now. Shows the total, shows how much Bob Barker is actually paid to date. And if we went back to the bidder payments, now Bob Barker still owes $425 because he hasn't fully paid. We can go to each individual dinner and see who has won those, how much money it brought in, and all of that. I haven't put anybody in there. The Hawaiian dinner we got filled out. So, wow, $610 by offering a dinner and having 10 people bid on those seats. I had to make a separate page, which was longer for this Hilton Garden because 25 exceeded the size of this one. I could have made this longer, but I didn't want a really long one for most of them, which were a shorter list. So I just made, that. And the last thing is we have a list of items, what is it that people have donated so we can order them and do that. And then when I go back to the first page, and all this does is this summarizes how many dinners did people donate? Were there any dinners all in one, which there weren't this year, but some years we do. That's where somebody says, hey, I'm gonna do a steak barbecue at my house for any group of 4 or 5 people, but you have to buy the whole thing as a unit rather than 4 or 5 seats. And sometimes we have people donate those, sometimes we don't. We had 4 services on the auction, 3 items, nothing that wasn't otherwise classified. So for a total of 121 auctionable items, and you'll notice this is just counting the number of winning bids between B4 and B5. And the reason for that is, see, B4 to B5 is this long list. This is how many things were up for auction. So that just counted those. This counted the number that have currently been bid on. So obviously I haven't populated the list with a lot of things, but if I went in here and said, Alba and Eddie bought 2 sweaters, one for $75 and one for $80. And now we go back to the summary sheet, you see that this went up to 21 because 2 more things were on the purchase list. There were a total of 34 bidders at the auction. So far, it raised $1,383. Oh, this should be dollars. Hold on. And so far, collected $174 and there's $701 outstanding. Now, that's a good question. Why don't those add up? I'll have to go check it. It was working before. If you think about it, total amount of the auction should equal the amount collected plus the amount owed, right? So there's an error in these formulas right here. I had just done a massive rewrite of this in the past 2 days because there were errors. I originally wrote this about 10 years ago. Excel's changed a lot, and so this week I copied it all over into Google Sheets and modified it, and there's still a couple of errors. You'll notice on the item list, see these 4 dummies down at the bottom? Those are actually needed because one of the other formulas, if I don't have these, it will ignore the last 4 things in the list. So in order to get Arlene Skiles' Israeli-Palestine fusion dinner with 6 seats, I had to put 4 dummies beyond that. Formulas look okay to me. I will probably end up having to post that to one of the online Excel forums and say, look, can you take a look at this and tell me why this is choking and dying on that? For the moment, by putting those 4 in there, then it works out okay. So we've got 13 there, bidder payments. Yeah, that looks all right. Summary sheet. Go look in bidder payments. And select B. I'll have to look at it. So that's an example of how, and that's nothing we're going to work and do in this class. But I think it's important for you to see that you can use Excel and Google Sheets to manipulate data in some fairly fundamental ways. You can use it for keeping track of all of your music CDs that you have in your house. You can use it to keep your contact information, although if you're like me, most of that's right on your phone or in your Google contacts list. You can use it for sales. Maybe you sell things on eBay and you want to keep track of all the things that you've posted there and how much they sold for. Although, again, eBay offers that same kind of tracking for you. Maybe you, I know each year when I am purchasing stuff for camps in May and June, I will start a list of orders that I've put out. And if you're familiar with things like Amazon, you might put an order in for 5 of this, 8 of that, 4 of this, and 12 of that. And they're going to come as 4 different packages. And so I need to keep track of what actually came in so that I don't miss it. And because I buy from Newegg, Amazon, eBay, and sometimes from other vendors, it's important for me to know if I'm missing a shipment, because I buy enough stuff to build 50 computers every summer, not to mention stuff for 3D printing and the regular other camps that we run. So I use Excel or Google Sheets for that, and that's a fairly simple thing to do. I just start a sheet, where did I buy it? What date did I put the order in? What components am I expecting to get from that? And then as they come in, I can just go in and arrived on, and so that works pretty good. Let's see if anybody, excuse me. I don't see any questions. I don't think there's anything else I feel like I need to cover today. We've covered a huge amount talking about Excel. Go in there, take a look at it, get chapter 1, projects 1, 2, 3, and 4A for Monday, and just do a quick perusal, because again, we've got a word exam on Monday as well. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to sign off. We'll keep it short today. All right. Talk to you later.